Hello, welcome to Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda. In Luke's Gospel and chapter 12, we find a parable there described as the parable of the rich fool. It says, "Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, 'Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me.' And Jesus replied, 'Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?' And then he said to them, 'Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions.' And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop. And he thought to himself, 'What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops.' Then he said, 'This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you, and then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? And this is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for himself, but is not rich towards God.'" So how do you get rich towards God? The answer to that is very simple and very biblical. It's in the Old Testament, in the book of Proverbs, chapter 19, verse 17, where it says, "He who gives to the poor lends to God." Now, you can lend money to people, and depending on who you lend it to, you get a different rate of interest. You have a different different possibility of getting it back, or a probability of getting it back. Many times people will lend money in risky investments, gambling on getting a high rate of interest, but then there's a risk that they could end up losing everything. The wonderful thing about lending money to God is that you lend at a high interest rate and with a guarantee that you will get it back again. Now, you might say, well, hang on, you're saying that everybody that gives money to the poor always gets plenty of money back in this life. No, I'm not saying that. I'm actually saying there's something much more important, because like the man in this parable, you never know whenever your life is going to be demanded of you. I mean, right now with the pandemic running through the land, we see how people's lives are more uncertain than ever. And for us to hear those words, "Tonight your life will be demanded of you, your life is required of you," then what does our wealth count for us then? There's a popular saying that says you can't take it with you. Well, actually, you can take it with you. You can take it with you by giving to the poor. Because whenever you give to the poor, you lay up treasures in heaven. He who gives to the poor lends to God. It's an amazing principle. So the aim is not to try to store up more and more and more so that we die and become the richest person in the graveyard. But the aim should rather be to use the resources that God has given us to bless others and to be a blessing to the poor and to make a difference to this world where God has placed us. And when we do that, then our finances can indeed carry on bringing us blessing beyond the grave, because we've sown into something eternal and we're reaping a harvest in something eternal, which is our eternity with God. So I want to encourage you today, don't be a fool. Don't just operate on a principle of greed and the maximum accumulation of wealth. Yes, we do have to be wise. Yes, we do have to try to make sure that the essentials are paid for and the future is prepared for. And yes, we should provide for our family as well, because the Bible says he who fails to provide for his own family is worse than a heathen. But nevertheless, that is not the primary thing. The primary thing is that we lay up riches in heaven. And the great thing is we do have so many opportunities to give to the poor. There's so many ways we can do that. So many ministries, so many charities, so many appeals. And I want to encourage you today, just find some way to be generous to the poor. It might be an online gift to some kind of appeal that you saw on TV. It might be sending a gift to a missionary or a ministry that works amongst the poor. But I would encourage you, give to the poor, lend to God, and don't be a fool. Thank you for listening today, and join us again tomorrow for another Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda.